Hi, this is Judy with Primitive Quilts and Projects, and today we're going to learn about big stitch quilting from our expert Don Heath of Linen Closet Designs. So, hi Don.
Hey, Judy, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for your time. You want to tell us a little bit about your work before you launch into the demonstration?
Okay. I started in the quilting industry in 2009 with publication of my first book with Kansas City Star. Shortly after, I moved into creating my own standalone patterns for my pattern company, Linen Closet Designs, and moved into magazine work. I started out with Primitive Quilts and Projects from the get-go. I worked with them for the first 4 issues and continued on there. And I've done a lot of issues of Primitive Quilts and Projects. Like I said, I don't know how many, but I've been in more than I have not been in. And as the publishing industry changed, my publisher changed, and I moved into publishing with the French publisher Quilt Mania. And I am now a Marcus fabric designer.
Mhm. That's a wonderful path.
It's been wonderful. Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about the quilt behind you and whether to use colored thread or not?
Okay, this quilt is called Folly. It's on a cream background, and it is all big stitch quilted, and it's big stitch quilted in straight lines. This is a very circular. This quilt's got a lot of circular motion in the shapes and the way they move around. So when you're working with circular and curvy lines, geometric quilting will complement it. And the reverse is true. If you've got a really geometric quilt, flowy and circular types of quilting will complement it as well. This quilt is quilted in a bright yellow and a pink thread entirely. And so when you look at this, you probably don't see that. But when you do like a fine hand quilting, you're taking 3 layers of a quilt. You've got a top, your batting, and your backing, and you're pulling them down really, really, really tight with very, very small stitches. So that creates some deep valleys and a lot of texture that can really be seen. When you're quilting with when you're doing a big stitch quilting, you're using a bigger thread and a bigger stitch. And so it doesn't create nearly as much texture. Your thread lays on top a little more. So if you want that quilting to be a little more visible, then you want to add some color to it. So these blocks are quilted with a yellow, and then these are quilted with pink. But you don't immediately see that color. It just helps those stitches to stand out. So this is an older quilt. It's from 2013, and I've re-released the pattern just this past year with my fabric line, Neighborhood Florist. And so it's available with a dark blue background, and the pattern's been updated.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any examples of quilts with matching thread?
Yes, I do. Let me see here. I don't have here we go. So this little quilt was an example that I did not want a lot. I didn't really want to add anything else to attract your eye because it was small and there were a lot of things going on. So for this one, I big stitch quilted this with just a cream colored thread. Mm-hmm. And if you can see here, this background is a stripe. I use a lot of wovens and I use a lot of stripes. And stripes are really great because you don't have to mark your quilt. You can just follow the lines in your fabric. So this has been quilted, just kind of some outline quilting where it was needed, and the rest of it I just followed the stripes in the quilt and then outlined around these I don't know, little points, whatever you want to call them, little dog teeth. Mm-hmm. You want me to just go right on, Judy?
Yeah, go ahead and jump on in.
So when I was talking about marking, the stripes really speed things up because I don't have to mark where I'm going to quilt. But sometimes you will need to mark. Maybe you're going to do, like a grid or a floral design or something. The only thing that I use to mark my quilts would be like a blue water soluble pen, or if I'm working with something dark, then I will use like a chalk. I'm guaranteed that this will come out. I have had people tell me that when they marked, they tried to remove it with the water and it disappeared and then came back. And all that is you've marked really heavy. The ink has went down into the batting and the water has brought it to the front. So just rinse it again and it will come out and it will not damage your fabric. That being said, I'm just going to put kind of a line on here so we can use that here in just a minute. The thread that I use for big stitch quilting is pearl cotton, and I exclusively use Valdani. Valdani is hand dyed. It has a lot of variegation in it, and I like that. I like where it looks like some of the quilting has faded away and some of it's stronger. You can use a size 12 or you can use a size 8. It's just a matter of personal preference, and I go back and forth. The 8 is heavier. The smaller the number, the larger the thread. But it is not standardized through the industry. So a size 8 in Valdani may not be the same as an 8 in DMC or Wonderfill. But a size 8 or a size 12 generally will work for you regardless. The needle that I use is a chenille needle. It looks a little like a tapestry needle, except it has a sharp point to it. And the eye on this needle will accommodate size 12 or size 8 pearl cotton, and it's a nice size for rocking your needle. And it's a size 24 if I didn't say that. Sometimes I get ahead of myself and I forget. So the first thing you're going to do with your quilt is you're going to baste it. I always pin baste with safety pins. And then you're going to need a quilting hoop. And I use a Morgan double stand hoop. This one is a size 10 and a size 14. So it's super versatile. You can use it for anything. I use it for rug hooking. I can use it for punch needle, embroidery, and my quilting. So it's an invaluable tool to me. It's made from a super heavy resin, so it will last you forever. And then the two hoops join together with these little legs, which creates the lap. And if you're doing very much quilting, it's a really good thing to have for your body, because that brings the quilt closer to you, so you're not leaning over as much, and it helps to hold the weight of the quilt. So you're not scrunching your shoulders and holding that so much, especially if you're quilting something big or for a long period of time. And I can quilt any size quilt in this. I just put it in here and quilt and then move it around. When you put your quilt in, the main purpose of the hoop is making sure that your front is smooth and your back is smooth. Okay, so you're going to want to turn it over and look and pull a little bit to smooth it out if it's not smooth. That's the purpose of the hoop. The purpose of the hoop is not to keep your quilt drum tight like you would for punch needle or rug hooking. You want to have a little give. Somewhere along the lines, there was a myth that got out there that you want that to be drum tight, and you don't, because you're not going to be able to make your stitches properly. So I'm going to thread my needle. And I cannot thread it if I don't put it in my mouth. Get that in here. And, you know, I am a prime example of do as I say, not as I do, because I break all my own rules. You really shouldn't have a thread really any longer than that, because it's likely to tangle on you. But I absolutely hate to stop, and I go through a lot of threads, so mine will be too long. And if I run into problems while we're videoing this, then that will be a prime example of what not to do. Here's my thread. Now we're going to make a quilter's knot. Quilter's knot is really easy. Sometimes people are kind of intimidated by that. You're going to hold the end of your thread in this hand. You're going to hold your needle in this hand. And then you're going to hold that thread against the needle, okay? And you're going to wrap it around 3 times. And so that creates like a tube while that's wrapped around there. And you're just going to hold that thread wrapped around that needle, and then you're going to pull that needle up. And as you do, you're holding that tube you made. And so it pulls that thread through there, and then that creates your knot. And it'll be nice and tight. Okay. Not sure how close I need to be. I work with a thimble. I use a Roxanne thimble. It's sterling silver. When I bought it many, many years ago. I was a single mom with 2 little kids, and it made me almost physically ill when I paid for it. But it is more valuable to me than any piece of jewelry I own. It just fits my finger perfectly. So it's really important to find a thimble that fits you. If you've got one that doesn't work for the way you quilt, keep looking until you find one. This is really nice if you have nails, which I don't right now because it's summertime, because it won't go over the top of your nails, and I can quilt from the side of it. So sometimes people will quilt their quilts doing big stitch quilting, and they're just doing kind of a running stitch. They don't even have it in a hoop. And, you know, whatever works for you is what you do. But because I'm trying to teach you about big stitch quilting, I want to say that doing a running stitch is not big stitch quilting. It is something different. Also, going through and coming up and going through and coming up stab stitch is also not big stitch quilting. It's something else entirely. Big stitch quilting is done exactly like fine quilting, except with a bigger thread, a bigger needle, and a bigger stitch. So it's a two-handed process. So I'm going to insert my needle into the top and the batting, not going through the back, about an inch away from where I want to come up. And I'm going to bring it through here. And I'm going to bury that knot. And I'm going to see what happens when your thread's too long. I am going to use my thumb to kind of and just bury that knot. So that knot is now in the batting and in between the top and the back. So when you're quilting, your hand is going to look something like this. When I teach in person, I always tell people you have a claw and you're going to a claw. And the reason for this is how you do fine hand quilting. And the reason for it is it's a process, and it's going to ensure that your stitches are consistent. And consistency is super important in big stitch quilting. Size of your stitch is not nearly as important as the consistency. It's bigger, it's bolder, and you can see it, and you need those to be consistent. Additionally, the space between your stitches is generally going to be less than what the length of the stitch is. So I don't know if I can make this make sense. Let's picture a 1/4 inch stitch, a 1/4 inch space, a 1/4 inch stitch, a 1/4 inch space. That's going to be really boxy. And so going around curves, it's not going to be really smooth. So if you've got a stitch that's close to a 1/4 inch, then you want that space to be a little less. So that's going to help those to just kind of flow around. I was going to see if you could see on here, and I don't think you'll be able to because of that. So you just want your stitches to be closer together than the length of the stitch. And so your stitches on the back where the spaces will be smaller. This hand is going to go under this quilt. And the whole purpose of this hand is one thing. When this needle goes through, so I'm going to put this needle in, okay? And this is the finger that I use to control that needle. This finger under here is to catch that needle when it comes through. So as soon as it goes through and I feel it, I'm going to push it back up. So this finger will push that needle back up while this is taking it down. I think, how does that look, Judy? Can you see pretty good from there?
Yeah, let me,
Or should
yes.
I move? Okay.
Yeah.
So I've got my needle. Okay. That's up. I don't usually do quite a 1/4 inch. I do a little less than that for a big stitch. Okay. So it's right there. It's went through. I can feel it on my finger. So I'm going to rock. Okay. And you see what my thumb is doing? This finger has pushed that needle up. My thumb is pushing down, and that lets that come through. I'm at kind of an awkward position here. Bringing my needle up through my fabric as soon as I can feel it, which there we go. Feel it go through. I'll do this for real in just a minute so you guys can see how. And then you're going to rock it up. You can see how that makes that little hill. Because your finger under here is pushing that up, your thumb's pushing it down, and then you can go through. This is not going to be really pretty stitching, guys, because I'm too far away and I'm making my stitches too far together. So I'm going to take this here on my lap and back up. I'm going to kind of get like this so that I can just kind of show you how I would go about this. And I grabbed the wrong batting. And this batting has a scrim on it, which makes it really hard to needle through, which is a good thing because then that lets me tell you when you're doing hand quilting, you want to use a thread a batting that does not have a scrim. And a scrim is just kind of a layer of melted resin that's been put on there to hold the fibers together, but it makes it hard to get your needle through. So you want to use something without a scrim. Always read your batting. Okay, so see my needle's going in, and I've got that claw, which is controlling the needle and pushing down my fabric to make that hill. And then I can go right back in. And the thing is, and in the beginning, you'll have to think about this a little bit, and then it becomes second nature and it becomes super fast. So it's however far that needle goes through is how far apart your stitches are going to be. So if you let that whole tip of that needle go through, that's how far those stitches are going to be apart. So as soon as you feel it on your finger, it needs to come back up. And then however much of the needle tip is showing, that's how big your stitch is going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. It just takes a little bit of practice. And the biggest key to success is this, and I say this with sincerity, and that is look at your work with some kindness. When you look at your work, look at it like your friend is learning something new and she comes and shows you what she has done. How are you going to look at that and judge that? So judge your own work like you would a friend who's learning something new. Your stitches are not going to look like someone's who's been quilting for 10 years or quilts every day. You will get there. Just give yourself a little bit of kindness. So that's the main thing. And, just get started.
That is such good advice. And wow, that's beautiful. It didn't take you any time at all to do that either.
No, and that's with me kind of fumbling around and using a batting that's, not necessarily conducive to that. But yeah, it goes along really quickly. And if you're using something like a straight background where you're not spending any time marking, you could just move right along because straight lines are really fast.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful. And you explained it really well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
One other thing really quick. So when you're finished with your quilting, so let's say you're about out of thread, you're going to make a quilter's knot just like you did before, but with your thread that's coming out of there. So I'm going to take my needle and wrap my thread around the needle about 3 times again and pull it up through that tube and make my knot. Okay. And then I will put my needle in where another stitch would be so that that's the length of a stitch. And then just run my needle through the top and the batting, not through the back. And then just bury that knot, and then you'll never be able to tell where it ended. And I have some scissors somewhere. Here we go. And I give it a little bit of a tug so that when I snip it, it goes back in, and then you've got a perfect ending.
Voila. That's beautiful.
I think that's about all I can tell you.
Well, you made it look really simple.
It is.
I hope everyone gives it a try.
Yep.
Yeah. So the double hoop seems like a really good idea too. I've never used a hoop. I just, fumble through it. I think I need to get one of those.
Yeah, it's a big game changer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So before we wrap this up, would you like to tell our readers if they're interested in your work, like your website or social media, how can they find you?
I am on Facebook as Linen Closet Designs. You can look that up. Instagram is Quilter Heese. And if you're interested in shopping fabric and patterns, it is linenclosetdesigns.bigcartel.com.
Okay.
So
All right. Okay. Well, I hope everyone comes to see you. And I hope everyone got a lot out of this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dawn. It was good seeing you.
Yeah. Thanks, Judy. It's good to see you too.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
Yep.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.